of owning a cafe, and other heroic deeds, by Beware the Tristero. Chapter 148. The world spins off its axis. Bzz, bzz, bzz. Grumbling, Dobby sent the arm that wasn't trapped under his husband to search for whichever of their phones was going off.
What time is it?
I'm looking. Hold on. He managed after another yawn racked him, his blearily eyes prying open since his hand couldn't find the blasted thing unaided. Holy shit, he managed whilst curling further around his partner, his phone grindily grasped and hovering near his lover's face as they continued to relax on their shared futon. It's 8:17, he furthered before pushing himself up on his elbow, despite Tomra bemoaning the lack of warmth. And Gotchon is calling. He blinked, his eyebrows rising a fraction. As he pressed the accept button, his husband similarly curious, even as he rubbed at his own sleep-heavy eyes with fingers encased in quirk-restricting gloves, his brain finally started to unline. Hey, firecracker, Shouldn't they have woken up earlier than this? Didn't their guardian's cooking usually rouse them through a combination of delicious smells and the sounds of smooth jazz filtering up from the cafe proper? We can't get hold of Shonin. You had told me you were at the Norineko. Is he there? Balking in unison, he and his husband sat up, their eyes meeting before they scrambled up from their bedding-free mattress and headed towards their bedroom's door, their haste causing Gigi to grumble as they passed this oversized nest. I don't know. Hold on a second. Are you on your way? He breathed, his mind not caring one bit that he was only in his pajamas whilst he made his way down the front stairs as the younger man jogged to the back. Didn't you guys go for your run this morning? No, came the bitten-out bitter response, the telling rasp of static, letting him know that the blonde had his phone on loudspeaker. Wait, most of us were still asleep when he contacted us. Nissan, he's not responding to our calls and messages. Scowling, his heart fluttering oddly at the sound of the usually brash youth's worry, Dobby skidded into the completely empty kitchen, his teeth gritting. I'm shutting off the alarm and opening the cafe now, he told his younger siblings whilst pushing through the service door and into the service bar area, his eyes scanning the room before casting his gaze towards the windows where he could see the group of teens pelting towards him. Nato, go see if he's at your apartment. I'll go with him, Denki cut in.
Me quiero.
Toshi, Izu, and Shoto, you go check in with your moms in case he's visiting them. He continued, his free hand deactivating the secure system before he scurried to the door and unlocked it, his head then snapping towards the other end of the eatery. When Tomura appeared, his frown concerned and head shaking before he began tapping at his phone, those crimson eyes narrowed as he gasped and blinked in surprise and shock. What? He asked, his mind momentarily forgetting about the open call.
Schultz's phone,
his husband replied, his fingers clicking a staccato upon the screen to no avail.
And my tracking app isn't picking up any signals,
he added, their eyes locking from across the table-smattered area.
And it's completely dead. I can find it even if the battery's dead, but...
Wait, that means it's been totaled, right? He heard himself say. The shocked thudding in his ears doubling in rhythm and volume. Dobini? Fuck! And now he'd further worried the Smalls. Okay, he breathed. We need to think this through. That's what Sho would do, he added, his head nodding. Guys, I want you to buddy up and go check through the apartment block together. What? Tomura, go wake Spinner. Between the two of you, you should be able to find something, he continued before beckoning him over and making his way back towards the kitchen. I'm going to call Naruni because the cat will need seeing to, and she can get the word out to everyone else, he offered whilst they made their way back up the stairs. Kids, when you've finished looking, if you don't find him in the meantime, come back here and tell your moms and my other siblings to do the same, he instructed. Every minute counts, so if he's not up there, we need to form groups and start following his running routes to see what we can find, he nodded to himself. And I need us all to stay calm right now, okay? This is hopefully just a case of the cat dad breaking that fossil of a phone of his and hanging out near the closest electronics store until it opens. He tried, his tone unconvinced even to his own ears. It'd be just like Sho to rationally go out and buy a new one before coming back home to start breakfast, wouldn't it? By 8:30, the man who'd brought them all together and sewn them into a community was still unaccounted for. Officially, I can't log Shouta as a missing person and investigate his absence until 24 hours have passed. However, unofficially, this is my day off and I'll be at the Noroneko in 10 minutes, alright? And if any of you find anything you think could be important in the meantime, then please text me. Now, Masa! And Sansa straight away. Thank you, Kenji-san, we will. See you soon. And we're still. No one had seen him. No one had spoken to him after he contacted the kids before 6. Should I call Mirai-san? I think it's best that he tells Toshinori-sama so they can make their way home together. That meant he'd been potentially missing for 2.5 hours. No, I've just been talking to Sugarame-san, and since we don't know what's happening yet, we'll leave calling them until we know what's going on. We're just waiting for the pussycats to get her before we go searching along his running route. I hope we're being overly cautious, but I don't know. I've got a bad feeling about all of this. That fact alone had spurred him and his friends into action. Their roommates similarly had shaken off their sleepiness, scrappled the dress, and started helping in whatever way they thought best after Mimi-chan and the girls had been called in, their maternal instincts helping to soothe them all as they looked after the cats, and began to cook for the masses who were on their way. Hey, don't go selling your dad short now, okay? Show is probably more resilient and resourceful than a lot of us put together, I'm already on my way, Nabi-kun. Tell Keiko, Rumi, and Ryuku that I'll rendezvous with them at the youth center. Alright? Spinner, Hizashi, and Tomura were crowded around their laptops in his favorite booth, not so legally, tapping into various CCTV relays, but after clocking the eatery owner leaving the apartment block that shared its courtyard with the cafe, his form dashing down his longer preferred route to check on the youth center and his mother's floristry school, he'd not been spotted again. Well, not down any of the usual roads he trekked anyway, and hacking into privately owned cameras was a trickier thing to do, wasn't it? Jin is sending 6 of his clones back to the cafe to act as chaperones for the kids. I don't know, are you sure that they should be involved? Wouldn't it be safer for them to stay there? His mother and her best friends were here with them, of course, their calming presence the only reason why the Smalls hadn't gone racing off to look for clues themselves, and not that he and the other older members of their community wanted to alarm them further, but if there was foul play at the heart of this, then they're all pretty uptight. I think they're feeling guilty about not running with them this morning, which is something I've chewed them out for because that's not right. But I think that they need this, Shizome. When we find Shoshaba for the best deal on a new phone, we can all take turns giving him a cat that lecture for a change. Just keep looking and call me when you see him, will ya? They couldn't risk the kids getting hurt. Shouta would be insisting on them being watched, looked after, and assured, and that was exactly what they were doing and would continue to do.
You got it, Tabi-kun. Oh, in fact, comes on his way, too. He and Rappa are with Tamaki and Mirio. Is Natsuo already out looking?
He couldn't believe that this was happening. Yeah, he's got his provisional license, so he took off with Neijire the second she arrived. He replied as he stood next to the coffee machine, a fresh round of the steaming, caffeinated goodness ready to be made when their reinforcements arrived. Unlike the rest of us, he was awake and dressed when this whole thing kicked off. He huffed his own guilt, spiking. If he'd been awake at his usual time, if he'd realized that Sho wasn't home when he usually was, then...
Oi, I can hear you worrying through the phone, We'll find him, It's like you just said, he'll be at the mall or something. Hell, maybe his favorite fancy food shop has had a flash sale or something, right? I'm just about ready to land on the mall's roof to scout around from up here, and Jin is already inside with 2 more clones asking to see their CCTV feed, so we'll know if he's been here soon. Snorting and blinking out of his musings, Dabi tried to smile whilst he tracked Kenjiji's car as it pulled up to the curb outside the Noroneko, his civilian attire matching the other 2 officers that were a part of their family as they strode towards them. I'll let you go then, he breathed. The police force are here. Be careful out there, and we'll see you soon, okay? Just about repressing his growl, Bakugo Katsuki regarded Eijiro, Rikido, and Shoto with a barely restrained scowl. You guys need to knock this off right now, he told them bluntly. The 3 slumped dejectedly at the end of the larger study table whilst the rest of their friends nodded to them. Whatever has happened, if anything has happened to Shoni, it is not your fault, he huffed his arm folding roughly as he paced in front of the table. Things were bad enough without them turning on each other and feeling guilty,
weren't they?
but we... Oi! He got in his sneaker-clad feet, marching him over to
Eijiro, their crimson eyes meeting as Suyu continued to rub the ebony-haired boy's back.
That's enough,
he told him, his brows furrowing.
Blame it yourself. Is it going to help you or anyone else?
Come here, he reminded, his arms opening to the said boy, who latched onto him within seconds, the feeling of him shuddering through his tears making him sigh whilst he embraced him. God, they were all a mess! Izuku and Ochako were trying to get Shoto to talk to them, while Suyu was rubbing Rikito's back, the newest member of their junior league, sniffling every so often whilst he stared at a photo he'd taken that morning, his phone clutched between trembling fingers. However, their group had made some headway, hadn't they? Because Denki had taken one look at Hitoshi and Nato's escalating distress and swallowed down his own worries to approach Sugara Meiji, his face utterly resolved as he demanded that Shoni's sons get to go out with the next search party. He'd been stunned when the usually happy-go-lucky teen had spoken so boldly and honestly about their need to be involved, about how he and the rest of them all longed to help, but they all knew, their love of the cat dad aside, that the blonde and iris-haired boys were far closer to their beloved older brother, because he was their dad in every way that counted. The adults had balked. Naomasa had tried to interject. Kimiko-san had teared up. However, even in the face of them telling him that they needed to be patient for just a little longer, he'd refused. His hands had grabbed those of the slightly younger boys, and he'd stared the blinking adults down, his voice demanding that they join the search parties that their older pro-siblings had embarked on. He'd threatened that they'd go off by themselves, and seeing their mounting desperation, Tomoni had gone with them and Dabini to search for the man they couldn't love anymore if they tried. Shit, he hated being helpless, but seeing their growing stress and tension in the room, he tried to channel all of the lessons their team dad had taught him so he could gently settle the rest of his friends back onto their chairs, his eyes meeting Tomuni's as he nodded at him gratefully. The last thing their older siblings and parental figures needed was more worry that they'd start acting out and kicking up a fuss, wasn't it? And although he hated not knowing what was happening, he didn't want to make things any worse than they already were, did he? Plus, soothing Eijiro was important. Ruffling Izuku's hair helped to ground him. Telling Shoto that their family would be whole again mattered. Acknowledging the girls, setting their own anxieties aside to help the others was needed. Squeezing Rikito's shoulder to let him know he was still loved and included in their group would ease his stress. Walking to the cat enclosure to sit next to Kota and let him vent through throwing small fists until the tears came was the kind of support Shoni would offer, and those things, as small as they were vital right now, weren't they? However, as Jinni's clones finally arrived, they were all up and moving to the door before the adults could stop them. It was 8:57. There wasn't a minute to waste. Walking slowly, Aizawa Shouta's first ward was struggling to keep himself composed. However, his eyes flickering from the boys he used to live with to the ground, then across bricked buildings and over shop fronts, Dabi was glad they'd allowed him to cap their shoulders with his hands. It was probably helping to steady him more than anything, wasn't it? He was supposed to be the composed one here, wasn't he? How was he supposed to ease the tension? I'm sorry for yelling, earlier. Denki offered through the tense analytical silence that had enveloped them, his body walking directly in front of him with his left hand laced with Nato's whilst the right grasped Hitoshi's. Such a good kid. You kidding? He tried to chuckle, his tone fond. That was pretty spectacular. He told him, the other's face turning to look at him sheepishly over his shoulder, their eyes meeting for a second before he went back to critically observing the so far clueless floor. If anyone should be apologizing, it's me and the other old folks, he furthered in an attempt to lighten the mood. We were too busy thinking about keeping you guys in one place and safe, that we weren't considering how much you needed to do something, he admitted, his smile dimming. You guys, you're not smalls anymore, but you need to know that whatever is going on, we are trying to act in your best interest, okay? He breathed, watching as the teen show and Toshiji had adopted shrugged non-committally whilst their former ward remained rigidly fixated on looking around Dabi's side. This isn't because we don't trust you to act rationally, or that we think anything untoward is going on, alright? You guys, you need to think about your futures, okay? He reminded, his brows furrowing lightly. None of you are allowed to use your quirks, and the cat dad, he'd be devastated to think that you'd thrown your chances of entering UA away because you were trying to find him, wouldn't he? He reasoned. Me-san, we're going to find him, though, right? Feeling the blood in his veins freeze at Nato's quiet question, the flame quirk user nearly choked on his swallow. Of course we are, he inwardly spluttered, the hand he'd placed on the younger man's shoulder tightening its grip. You don't even think otherwise, okay? He urged the five of them, stopping at a road junction that Shouta would usually cross.
Nabi-kun is right,
Sansa stated, his expression unwavering.
Now then, from what you've told me, our cat dad wouldn't ordinarily jog through this residential area, and since the live map we're all updating is showing that none of us have checked up here, I think we should be the first, he added, his eyes slipping to the electricity quirk user. Denki-kun, why don't you come over to this side with me, okay?
Oh, yeah, you got it, Officer McWhiskers! The amber-eyed Dean replied a little hesitantly, his good humor attempting to resurface as he regarded his friends softly before skipping across the tarmac. He was so glad that they had each other, that all of them were safe. Oh God! Blinking his head snapping towards Hitoshi, he withstood over the crouching teen in seconds with Nato, their eyes locked on what he was pointing at. That's... He rasped while sinking to his knees, the feeling of dread he'd been pushing aside for so long finally coming to the fore.
Now, what is it? What have you found?
It shows Hello Kitty bauble. He replied numbly as the police officer told them not to touch it, his trembling fingers swiftly retracting. It was evidence. So were the dark strands of hair loosely tangled in it. Someone's cut it. It's been cut clean through. The iris-haired youth whispered, his tone horrified. That can only mean that he was attacked, right? Oh God.
Siganame-san, we found something. I've dropped a location pin in our map just now. We're going to need forensics and pros with tracking abilities on the scene right away.
Is this going to be happening?
We're not dealing with a missing persons case anymore, sir. I believe he's been abducted.